This week on the Four Rivers Ag Report, make sure you have your popcorn bowl ready for the Dust Bowl. Also, what to do if Grandma does get run over by a reindeer. And we have a couple of brand new folks to introduce you to. All that and more on the Four Rivers Ag Report. Welcome to the Four Rivers Ag Report. I'm Fred Peralta. This week it's the Mississippi River, the Farm Bill, and a specialty crop I'm particularly fond of. But first, WEIU on the 19th is showing two documentaries on the Dust Bowl. The first one is Stinging Dust, Forgotten Lives by Cameron Craig, and the second one is Ken Burns' documentary that runs on PBS called The Dust Bowl. Now, I thought we'd talk a little bit about both of these documentaries today with Cameron Craig, our resident go-to guy on weather, and documentary filmmaker too.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's your documentary is excellent, I got to say.
Well, thank you very much.
So the Dust Bowl, why is it gathering this much attention now?
Well, because the recent drought that we had across the United States, it covered more than 80% of the United States. And so it's kind of bringing to light some people's attitudes about water resources and what's the future going to be.
So why, I mean, drought then, drought now, what are the similarities that make people rise up?
The similarities is that the position of the jet stream. There was a ridge of warm, dry air over the Great Plains in the 30s and also in this recent drought, 2012.
So in the 30s, it wasn't just a single-year drought. It was multi-years that led up to this, right?
That's right. That's right. It really started in early 1930s, 31, just after we had a period of adequate rains across the United States. Then in 31, 32, we started to dwindle those rains. And then in 34, that's when the big storms, the dust storms, started to blow through the Great Plains.
What were some of the other factors that accounted for the Dust Bowl?
Historians and climatologists both say that if the Great Depression was the only thing that was happening, then it wouldn't have been so bad. Or if the economy was good and the Dust Bowl occurred, then it wouldn't have been so bad. But because you've got twofold situations, you've got the economy, dropping out from under us, and then the drought, it made problems all across the United States worse.
Okay, now if I understand correctly, part of the problem was due to the fact in agricultural areas in the West, prices were low, so they tried to raise more crops to support themselves, and the availability of machinery to farm ground that was never farmed before. Is that correct?
That is correct. And what they saw is that we can make more profit if we can look at all this land that we've got. Let's buy the machinery and then basically just turn over all the grasslands. And so when the economy dropped out, it's like, okay, now we have too much land. What do we do now? And so that was a big problem. I tell my students that the big factor here was greed. And so you've got the meteorological drought, you got the economy, and then, look at this profit that we can get. And so, the skies are unpredictable, especially at that time. They didn't have long-term forecasts. And so we have to take that event and use it for ourselves, especially with water resources. If we continue to take long, long showers, we're going to find ourselves in a world of hurt.
Okay, so more deodorant, less shower.
That's right.
Okay, now, let's talk about the actual event, the things to remember, the dust clouds blowing through areas. How much of the topsoil was lost?
In Chicago, it was reported in the newspaper back then that approximately 4 pounds of dust fell over the city. And so that's per person, 4 pounds of dust per person. Now, people think that, well, the topsoil blew through the Midwest, but it actually laid a little film on ships in the Atlantic.
Wow.
And so, and if you remember, several years ago, there was a dust storm in Texas. And when it came out to our vehicles at the end of the day, you could see this orange little powder on our windshields. And so that is due to the dust being picked up, put into the jet stream, and transported a long way.
Wow. So how did the people live through this?
It was a very difficult time. Like I asked my students, can you survive? Could you survive this? And a lot of them say, no, I got to have my iPhone, I've got to have some technology. They were adaptable. More so than I think that we are today. And so they struggled, always having grit in their mouths, and it was very difficult to sleep. Ugh. Yeah, it was very difficult to sleep, and congestion and things like that. There was a common malady called dust pneumonia that did unfortunately kill a lot of young folk.
So what are we doing now, quickly, what are we doing now to keep an event like that from ever happening again?
Soil conservation, better farming techniques, and then we rotate our crops.
So the things that we've come to just common sense, crop rotation.
That's right, that came from the 30s.
Keeping runoff to a minimum,
yes.
All that is from the 30s. So,
that's right.
Okay, well, it's the 19th. It's on starts at 7 p.m. with Cameron's Stinging Dust, Forgotten Lives, followed at 8 with the Dust Bowl, and then with an encore presentation of Stinging Dust at 10 o'clock. So Cameron, thank you very much. We look forward to watching it.
Thank you.
With me now is Sherry Burcham. She's a family life educator with the U of I Extension Office, and Sherry's our go-to person when we're talking family issues, and December is Family Issue Month. So, not officially, but realistically. Sherry, I'd like to talk to you. We've talked about how to make these family gatherings, a little bit more tolerable, but this is also a good time to talk about how these family times are a good time to check up on each other, isn't it?
Right. A lot of times the way families are so mobile now, and we live farther and farther apart, and there's a lot of loved ones that we don't see, but maybe one time a year, or, especially older loved ones. And this is a really good time when we go visit them to be checking up on basically their situation, to see how they're doing.
What sort of things should we be looking for when we're checking up on our family members?
Well, some of the basic things that you'll want to look for when you're on your visit with them is, how is the condition of the home, as far, not so much the outside, but the inside, the environment itself, especially compared to what it normally is. If you have a person that's usually neat as a pin, and now all of a sudden things are starting to stack, and there's food laying around, things like that. Other types of things to look for, their physical and mental condition, have they lost a lot of weight? Do they seem confused or repeating themselves? Just kind of really trying to pay attention to those types of cues, because this might be, your only opportunity, other than, you leave and then a neighbor calls sometime events later and says something's wrong.
That would be your worst nightmare. So if you see signs that your loved one is fading or is acting in ways that is not normal for that person, what should you do at this time?
Well, although, the holidays, we want to just enjoy, and get through.
Good luck with that, yes.
Right. It is also a very good time to have a talk with them. If you do notice things that are concerning you, that, that you bring up those concerns with them and ask them, about if they've noticed things, those same types of things. Are they having difficulties getting things done? Do they need help with certain tasks? And then also, just making them a part of that conversation and talking with them and leaving it open. I know a lot of relatives, when they come across a situation that they have found a lot of changes, they may extend their stay, or while they're there, try to get a professional in that can help them with like senior services that can help maybe talk through it as well as an objective third party, and address some of those, what can we set up that'll help ease our minds for our loved one as we're away.
Well, another issue is, okay, if you see your loved one is fading, How do siblings handle this? Now that's a whole nother family dynamic, isn't it?
Right, especially like if you have siblings that maybe see them more often than you see them. Sometimes there is a difference of opinion, and you know, you think there is a huge difference, they don't seem to think so, or you want to do something a little more drastic and they don't. That's when you really do need that open communication is important, and involving the person, because you are talking about their care, so they need to be involved in that and see what are they willing to do. And lots of times if you involve them in the conversation of, we're trying to help you to help ease our minds, what can we do? They take ownership as well, and they may allow some more things in the home than if you just said, we're going to set this up, and you know.
That's a really good point, but you know, the older people I've known, or the generation before mine, they don't often want to ask for help.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, and they can be a little stubborn sometimes. I mean, because you know that's their independence, and that's a huge thing. And the way to kind of come across with that is you're trying to help them be independent. So, you know, these are little steps to try to put in place at this time to help them stay at home. That's always a real hot topic. That, you know, stay at home rather than let them continue on down that path and have a fall or something major happen, and then they're boom in the nursing home.
They're in a nursing home and they're stuck there and they're going to die there, they think.
And sometimes, a lot of times that is a good way to approach it, and you will get cooperation. Not always, not always, but
and not always agreement with the siblings. But Sherry, thank you. Those are great tips, and please check on your loved ones and enjoy the holidays and enjoy the time families have together, correct?
Yes, yes, please do.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed the time I've had with you.
Yeah, you too, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you. Monica Becker is here with a story about an old Russian wise tale. Monica?
Thanks, Fred. I'm Monica Becker. Most of the news this week is about stuff that isn't there, like the continuing story about the water that isn't in the Mississippi and the water in the Missouri that isn't coming this way. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers have reported that the initial work to remove large rocks and other barriers to navigation on the Mississippi will begin later this month. The rains last week have helped at least a little bit because the river's levels were falling at a slower rate. That means a few more days until traffic won't be able to move on the river. The removal of the obstructions on the river bottom will mean another 1.5 feet of depth in certain locations, but the river is very close to nearing the 9-foot depth that commercial barges need. In the meantime, interested parties and politicians have been advocating for a release of the Missouri flow. This week, the Illinois Farm Bureau called on President Obama and Congress to act on the issues surrounding the Mississippi River water levels. And Lieutenant Governor Sheila Simon convened the Mississippi River Coordinating Council to put pressure on the Army Corps of Engineers. If nothing more is done, current estimates have the Mississippi to be navigable between Cairo and St. Louis till later this month. Then there is the little issue of the Farm Bill, which isn't going anywhere right now. The website Farm Policy reports that there has been some background talks between the House and the Senate, but it's unclear how close they are to an agreement, and there are strong disagreements remaining on the structure of the new commodities subsidies. With the so-called fiscal cliff looming at the first of the year, and with no Farm Bill, the budget cuts, and potential tax hikes, many farmers and ranchers could see major changes in their taxes.
One of the huge tax provisions that will expire if we go over this fiscal cliff is inheritance tax.
The inheritance tax is very important to farmers and their families. Right now, there is a $5 million exemption on inheritance tax, which covers most small to medium-sized farmers. But if the cuts were to expire, the exemption would drop to just $1 million, and the tax rates would bump up to 55%.
Current land values, what this will mean is that any young farmer or rancher that hopes to continue to farm or ranch will probably have to sell land.
The uncertainty will affect many young farmers at a time when cash is tight to begin with.
It would be pretty bad for our farm because we'd be looking at, having to look at the possibility of selling off productive assets, selling off ground, doing some of that stuff just to foot a tax bill if we were to unfortunately be in that situation. If my dad or brother or I would happen to die under that tax law, it could be a big problem for us.
The lack of a farm bill leaves agricultural officials confused on how to plan.
Congress has not shown us a lot of work in the past or in the recent past, and so it's hard to know for sure what'll happen.
And if there's one thing we know, farmers want security.
We need farmers as well as ranchers and livestock producers need certainty in business. That's the one thing we need to plan.
As the price of farmland continues to rise, that $5 million exemption means that farms that qualify become smaller and smaller, especially in our neighboring state, Iowa. In the past year, farmland prices in Iowa have shot up by 23.7%. The statewide average is $8,300 per acre. And if that doesn't make you want to kick yourself for not buying, Iowa State University officials say that over the last 4 years, the value of farmland has increased 64%. I'd like to see that rate in my savings account for once. But there is one way a farmer can decrease the amount of taxes they pay. It's donating grain to charity. Todd Gleason reports.
There's some really good reasons for a farmer to make charitable contributions of their farm products instead of the cash. There's some paperwork involved too, but the benefits of making a gift of, say, corn instead of cash may be worth the effort.
By giving the grain, he is able to take a tax deduction for all of his production expenses. He's going to be taking that on his Schedule F, assuming that he's an operating farmer, and he's not going to report any income from that grain. Therefore, it has the benefit of reducing his income tax, his Social Security or self-employment tax liability, and his state income tax.
Now, essentially, the gift comes out pre-tax dollars and all the input costs still get to be taken off. But you can't just write a check. First, you have to give up control of the grain or other commodity to protect yourself and be IRS compliant. It all requires a very specific paper trail.
Yeah, really what you're trying to protect yourself is that in the event of an IRS audit, that they don't say that you had constructive receipt of that grain sale. So by sending a letter, you're saying, Charity, I am giving you X bushels of whatever the commodity is, and here's where it's located on my farm. And would you please send me a letter and tell me where you want that marketed and when you want it marketed? Now they've got total control of that grain, and it's no longer yours.
The charity should respond in writing with directions on when and where to sell the commodity. In this case, we'll say it's corn, and the elevator would cut a check directly to the charity. That second part, it's important.
Two things that IRS looks at. Did you have dominion and control of it? First letter, no. Secondly, did you have constructive receipt of that grain? Could you have told the elevator, no, I changed my mind, just give me the money? And no, it was their grain. Whereas if you just take grain to market and say, oh, and please make a $5,000 check payable to my church, then it was really your money and you were giving them cash as opposed to grain.
In this case, cash is not king and the raw commodity is a more valuable gift. For University of Illinois Extension, I'm Todd Gleason.
We haven't had to report a story like this for a while, but that bug-eyed nemesis, the emerald ash borer, is back. 2 new counties in Illinois have been added to the ash borer quarantine. Infestations have now been found in Henry and Knox counties in the western part of the state. The emerald ash borer quarantine now covers 40% of the state. For more information about what the quarantine means to you, check out IllinoisEAB.com. And from the I can't make this stuff up file, an old Russian way of keeping milk from going sour by putting a frog in the bucket of milk has led to the finding of new antibiotic substances. Chemists from Moscow State University have identified a number of potential new antibiotic compounds in the skin of the Russian brown frog. They have found that some amphibians secrete antimicrobial substances called peptides through their skin as a first line of defense against bacteria and other microorganisms that thrive in the wet places that frogs, toads, salamanders, and other amphibians live in. The study found over 76 compounds that protect the frogs and can potentially be used for medical purposes. Amphibians in a bucket of milk? At least this would explain how one gets a frog in their throat. Thanks for watching. I'm Monica Becker.
And I'm happy to introduce Bailey Kirk. She is the new program coordinator for 4-H for this area's extension office. And Bailey, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from?
I am from Gaze, Illinois.
The lovely town of Gaze.
Very small, lovely town.
Gaze has a unique tourist trap.
Yes. We have a 2-story outhouse.
Well, of course, everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So you recently hired to run the 4-H program. So where did you go to school?
I went to SIU Carbondale. I'm a 2012 graduate.
So we won't hold that against you.
Nope, thank you.
Okay, and you know, 4-H is such an integral part of rural this area.
Absolutely.
What sort of things are you thinking about trying to do with 4-H?
Well, I'm wanting to go around to all the clubs after the new year starts, and I'm hoping to attend a club meeting for each of the clubs in Coles County and just go in and observe and see if there's any improvements that need to be made in the meetings and see what maybe I can help add to them. I'm also wanting to expand the number of kids that we have in each of our clubs.
So what sort of expansion are you looking for? You want to get more kids involved? What sort of things?
I'm wanting to, we have a lot of great, activities and workshops for kids to do, but I'm wanting to not only improve those, but I'm also wanting to get started on making some new programs for kids to be involved in and get more fun activities to get the kids in. And just so we can, I think a general misconception with 4-H is that there's a lot of work. There is some work, but it's so much fun.
Right.
And it's so good for kids. It gives them so many hands-on experiences and tools that they're going to need to succeed in the future.
Right. Every 4-H event I've attended, the kids are just having loads and loads of fun. And yet you see some beautiful things being done. $64,000 question. Were you a 4-H'er?
I was a 4-H'er. I was in the Blue Ribbon Go-Getters 4-H Club in Mattoon.
Okay.
My little sister actually is still involved with the Blue Ribbon Go-Getters.
Okay, so you're technically her boss now, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I don't think she sees it that way.
I was going to say, good luck with that.
Yeah.
So you were in 4-H, and what sort of activities were you involved in?
I was involved in clothing and textiles, and I was also in the cooking and baking stuff. And so that was my area at the time. And then my twin sister and my little sister both showed livestock at the fair.
Okay.
So they were involved in that, and I wish I would have done that now that I look back on it.
Okay,
but,
you miss out on the cows.
I did miss out on the cows, so I've always kind of regretted that a little bit.
So you've experienced some of the non-farming related 4-H activities, and your sisters, you were involved in some of the farming activities. What sort of things do you think would get more kids excited about participating in 4-H?
Well, I'm wanting to, I think there's more room to promote it, as well as growing the clubs. Wanting to go out there and hold some workshops for the kids and let them see all the opportunities they have in all these different projects that they can do come Fair Week. So I'm wanting to go in, and a lot of the projects already, they're fantastic.
Okay.
But I don't think there's ever too much improvement that you can do to something. So I want to make things more fun for the kids and get them more involved. I think if they see that there's a lot of fun to be had in 4-H with these projects, I think that'll be a little more enticing for the kids. So I'm just wanting to, go to all the clubs and maybe talk to them about the projects and see what their interests are. And if we don't have an interest for a child, maybe see what we can do about that, see if we can get some new projects started for them. And so,
well, it's excellent. 4-H is a great program.
Absolutely.
I love seeing what the kids can do. I love the science programs. I love the activities.
Right.
Good luck. Oh, before I say goodbye, do you know how many kids are involved in 4-H in this area?
I do not. We have a lot of clubs, and actually,
how many clubs do we have?
I think right now we have 12 or 13 clubs.
Okay.
I believe. And so, and they all are pretty good in numbers, but there's, you know, not enough kids the way I see it. You know, there's always room for more.
Yeah, right. So and the more the merrier, and 4-H is a pretty merry
most
place.
Definitely.
Well,
yes.
thank you so much. We look forward to talking to you in the coming year, and good luck in getting those kids out.
Thank you. Thank you.
And finally, the Peralta family harvested the sweetest little bean you could ever hope for. Natalie Peralta, all 7 pounds, 4 ounces of perfect, was born on Saturday in Champaign. Those of you who are grandparents know exactly what I'm feeling. And those of you who aren't, well, maybe someday. Well, that's it for this week. Be sure to start following us on Twitter. We're at 4 Rivers Ag, all one word. Work hard, be safe, and enjoy the beautiful sunsets. I'm Fred Peralta, and thanks for watching the 4 Rivers Ag Report.